死なないために死ぬほど準備することなんて絵に秘めあらたことでしょう。光栄だけど買いかぶりっすよ。
Hello guys, it's me Simo Urahara, and in this video we will talk about one of the strangest Bankai in Bleach. We talk about Zaraki as a crazy character who loves to fight. His craziness reached even his Zanpakuto, and how are its abilities in terms of Shikai and Bankai. And the strangeness didn't stop here when you know that even the Bankai of Zaraki had a Zanpakuto. This is a Shinigami who we thought he didn't have a Bankai and was identified as the only Shinigami to become a captain without having a Bankai. However, the shocking truth is something else. He has a Bankai for a long time, a Bankai that was manifested in the form of this lolly cute girl. But before we start talking about this weird Bankai, I'll give you the full story in detail of how little Yachiro has become the Bankai of Zaraki, and how was Zaraki's relationship with his Zanpakuto Nozarashi. So guys, I will base my words on the answer of Kobo himself about the subject, as well as some other data that we can deduce from what came in the manga, so that we can tell the full story of how this rusty sword turned into Shikai and then Bankai. It all started centuries ago, when little Zaraki was in the Rekongai lands. We don't know his origin and how he got there. We don't know if he is from a noble family or just an ordinary soul. The only thing we know about him is his existence as this form, as if he was existed only to fight and taste the blood of his enemies. And when I look at his face features, I can sense that he wasn't a talkative kid. On the other hand, it seems that the kid Zaraki was suffering from a small problem, namely, he had no sword to fight with. Maybe the swords he was fighting with in the past were just ordinary swords, meaning not Asauchi, and soon they were broken, which makes him unable to enjoy fighting. But fate will stand next to Zaraki and will fulfill his request for a sword to fight with, when he will pass by the remains of a battle that took place between the Shinigami and an enemy. We don't know how the battle took place and against whom and with whom, but through the only scene made by Kobo, there were several corpses of some Shinigami officers, and so it was a golden chance for Zaraki. Maybe he said, those are the people with black clothes who fights with special swords, and automatically he went to the one of the dead officers and stole his Asauchi. And I repeat, what Zaraki stole was Asauchi. The Asauchi is a nameless Zanpakuto, so what Zaraki stole is an Asauchi that was ready to contain his great spiritual power. Since the stolen Asauchi became in the hands of Zaraki, there, Zaraki's story began with his Zanpakuto, and as you can see, at that moment the Asauchi was just a normal sword, but later will change. But the problem with Zaraki is that he never entered to the Academy of the Shinigami, and didn't receive any guidance from someone to teach him how to use the Asauchi and reflect his soul inside it, and thus benefit from the full power of his Zanpakuto. Zaraki was only thinking that what he stole was just a sword. He uses it to cut and fight only, and not an incarnate entity that you can communicate with. All these things were absent from Zaraki, and therefore this had a great impact on Zaraki later on. The important thing is that after Zaraki stole the Asauchi, he fought with it for a period of time. That period was enough for a part of Zaraki's soul to begin to form inside that Asauchi. Thus, the first feature of Zaraki's Zanpakuto began to form. Of course, this formation occurred automatically and without Zaraki's awareness, because unlike many Shinigami, the Zanpakuto of Zaraki, which is Nozarashi, this is the one who will try to create a communication channel between her and Zaraki. Nozarashi said that she was with Zaraki more than anyone else. Being formed in the form of an adult woman with her own consciousness, she knew that Zaraki was not able to hear her voice, and therefore she tried from the early moments of her formation to make her voice reach Zaraki. And as you can see, the sketch made by Kobo, where we can see how Nozarashi was screaming for Zaraki to hear her. Even the fake Zangetsu told Ichigo about this. How did Nozarashi scream in order to be heard from Zaraki, but to no avail? This is why the real problem that Zaraki had since his childhood was that he didn't know that he was separated from his Zanpakuto and didn't benefit from its power. And this situation stayed like this for centuries until this incident. This incident is one of the important moments in Zaraki's life in his Zanpakuto. As we said, Zaraki's Zanpakuto is Nozarashi, an adult woman. It has been for centuries trying to contact Zaraki to no avail. On the other hand, we don't know how exactly Yachiro appeared. Kobo did not give us any explanation either in his answer, which spoke about Nozarashi and Yachiro, or in the manga. All we saw is that Yachiro appeared in front of Zaraki. We know how Zaraki will make Yachiro a Shinigami, but we don't know how she got reincarnated and Zaraki was originally unable to contact Nozarashi. So on this point, I will rely on the words of some fans that go along with my idea regarding this topic. So maybe what happened was as follows. Nozarashi, when she tried to contact Zaraki and did not succeed, decided to take another path, which is to embody a part of his strength towards the outside world. So when Yachiro appeared for the first time and came to Zaraki, Zaraki asked her where did she come from. Yachiro moved her hand and touched the sword, as if she indicated that she came from within the sword. As I said, we don't know how she was able to do that, but it's possible that Nozarashi was the one who made her reincarnate outside of her inner world so that she tells Zaraki the truth, so he can communicate with the Zanpakuto. However, when Yachiro incarnated, she embodied in the form of a little girl, unable to speak. Therefore, she couldn't express herself. But what is fact is that when we talk about the embodiment of the Zanpakuto outside the inner world to the outside world, we're talking here about the Bankai stage. Because the key of owning a Bankai is to be able to embody your Zanpakuto to the outside world. Therefore, since Yachiro was reincarnated outside the inner world of Nozarashi, she was the Bankai, and there is no doubt that on this page she wasn't visible, because she is part of Zaraki's Zanpakuto and he is the only one who can see her, and because Zaraki didn't know that this little child is a part of his Zanpakuto, here he did something unusual, and intentionally he gave the little child a name, which is Yachiro, and Yachiro is the name of a Shinigami who is Yachiro Unohana. And so by giving her that name, he turned her from being a part of his Zanpakuto to a Shinigami, because we know that the way the Shinigami name their Zanpakuto has a great impact on their powers and how they can form, and we have seen that with Yumichika and Renji. And so immediately after little child received the power of the Shinigami, she became Shinigami and also visible to all, and from that moment everyone was able to see her. So technically Zaraki had a Bankai, but he turned it into a Shinigami because he gave him the name of one of the other Shinigami, who is Yachiro Unohana. While the main problem remained with Zaraki, he could not contact the main Zanpakuto, who is the adult woman Nozarashi. Therefore, through Zaraki's previous fights, Zaraki was fighting with his sword without benefiting from its full power. The prevailing belief was that the shape of the sword of Zaraki was in the constant release of Shikai, which was wrong. But in the end, Zaraki's fight with Unohana was the ending point of the story of Nozarashi's suffering in reaching Zaraki. After the end of the battle and the restoration of Zaraki's power to its previous state, there Zaraki was able to clearly hear Nozarashi's voice calling him O Kenpachi of Zaraki. So after Zaraki got to know Nozarashi and knew his Zanpakuto's name, as soon as he pronounced it with little Yachiro near him, Zaraki removed the power of the Shinigami from her and she came back invisible and she returned to the first real Bankai body. So she was able to activate Zaraki's Bankai because she was originally able to incarnate outside the world of Zanpakuto. And thus she, and without even Zaraki had to say the word Bankai, she herself guided him to the Bankai path. And then Zaraki transformed into the Bankai style we know. But now as Zaraki knows the full truth of his power and how it works, and that he has a Shikai named Nozarashi and a Bankai that was manifested in Yachiro, I think he is able now to say the name of his Bankai, and probably this will give him another boost, since he is the one who will say the word Bankai and not Yachiro. Now I'm so excited to see the full story of Zaraki in the anime, at least to know Nozarashi and hear her voice and maybe her true form. So guys, tell me your opinion and see you in my next video.